5 seconds.
It's the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Washington Redskins in preseason game number 2 for the Washington Redskins as they play the Pittsburgh Steelers in preseason football. Welcome into Gametime Live presented by Verizon. Lou Holder on the field at FedEx Field for what will be a great test for the Washington Redskins as they play the always tough Pittsburgh Steelers. Joining me is Larry Michael, the voice of the Washington Redskins, as we see RG3 warming up. And Larry, your thoughts of the preseason thus far are very interesting. A lot of good storylines coming out of that Tennessee game, but now they're home for the first time, the first of 2 games this week for the Washington Redskins here at FedEx Field.
First of all, I want to welcome you back to another year with Gametime Live presented by Verizon, and we've changed our production a little bit. We're on the field a little bit later with a live broadcast on YouTube. So fans, tell your friends. About an hour and a half before every Redskin game, we'll be live right here on the practice field.
That's live.
That's live. Desmond Briscoe, and it's going to give you an inside look at what's happening here. This is the wide receivers working out with the quarterbacks. Of course, we will not see Robert Griffin III tonight. But I agree with you. It's a good test. Pittsburgh, good football team. And you look at Mike Shanahan's record in the preseason, he's 51-30. And that tells me that Mike Shanahan wants to win these preseason games. He sees value in winning these preseason games. And for a guy like Robert Griffin III, he's going to be a spectator. But you've got Kirk Cousins out there who's going to be the starting quarterback tonight. We will see Alfred Morris tonight for the Redskins. Didn't see him in game 1. There are a host of Redskins who will not play. Among those, Brian Arakpo. Some guys you're going to see, some guys you're not going to see, but it's another opportunity for guys to make an impression. And if you look at these wide receivers now, what's the wide receiver roster going to look like when all the final cuts are made? Those final cuts come after the 4th and final preseason game of the year.
Larry, you've been doing this for a long time. The second preseason game, what is the vibe of the second preseason game versus the first, the third, and the fourth?
I think this one's a little bit different. Normally the second preseason game, you see a little more action from the starters. And in the third preseason game, they have what they call their final dress rehearsal. But this is a Monday night game. The Redskins play again on Saturday. So I think that's going to factor in to how long you see the starters tonight as well as Saturday. It's a short turnaround, so I don't think you're going to risk your starters getting injured by playing them too long in game number 3. I think you'll see a half from the starters in this game, a little bit of a different take, maybe a half from the starters in game 3. Now, after game 3 are the first cuts, the roster cuts that get teams down to 75. After that, they cut to 53. So for a lot of guys, this is an opportunity tonight, knowing their playing time might be a little bit different in game 3, to show what they can do, to show that they belong on the roster. And the wide receiving corps does have a few question marks right now.
While we have you on for the first time for this Game Time Live presented by Verizon, I want to go back to training camp. I want to go back to the camaraderie that was built down in Richmond. Very new experience. As this team comes back home and has their first game or first contest after that experience, your thoughts on how Richmond went, the facilities, just the bonding experience that happened down there?
I thought it went great. I thought that it was a great change of pace for the Redskins. The people down in Richmond showed incredible hospitality. The facility was gorgeous. And I think the Redskins can't wait to get there in 11 months. But it is an opportunity to bond. I saw that happening. We stayed with the team. There's Robert. He doesn't go anywhere
without a whole bunch of
people. There you see down the sideline there, Dr. James Andrews is here. And so this might be that much anticipated some goals that he can realistically achieve. The big question is September 9th, opening night here, Monday Night Football against Philly. Will he be ready? And that group that just left, Bruce Allen, along with Dr. James Andrews, Larry Hess, Dr. Tony Casolaro, and Robert himself, that could be part of the process as we find out a little bit more of when he'll be back.
You know, there's a lot been said about Robert and about James Andrews and about the process, but the only reason why we're even having that discussion is because this team now is out of that, I guess, abyss of just, not having, something to look forward to every year. I mean, this is a franchise-changing quarterback, and there's reason for all this.
No question about it. First NFC East title since 1999.
That felt good.
Yeah, it felt real good, and a 7-game winning streak. Yeah. And you need talent to do that. And, again, you're focusing on the wide receivers now as they warm up. We are, at least. But you look at, there's a lot of talent out there. A healthy Pierre Garçon, are you kidding me? he's the number one. You've got Santana Moss, led the team in touchdowns last year. And you got a lot of guys vying for those other spots. Josh Morgan, I think, is very secure in his starting role. Santana, a slot man. But you look at the rest of them, I mean, even a guy like Sky Dawson out of TCU, the rookie's got a lot of promise. Aldrick Robinson, he has not looked good the last week of camp. He has been dropping some balls. We saw him drop one right here. Don't want to really say too much. He had a good year last year as a deep receiver. There's Dante Stallworth right there.
What's your thoughts on him?
I think you know what you get from him. You know he's going to catch the ball. And if you can't catch the ball, you have a problem catching the ball, you won't be here long. So there are some jobs. There's a guy right there, Lewis. He just dropped the ball. So, you got Lance Lewis. He looked pretty good in that first preseason game. But the nerves of being home could prevail a little bit here on these guys. And you hope
it's number 85. Your thoughts on him?
I'm going to take a tiny break. I got someone I got to talk to. But here's Brian Tinsman right behind.
Hey, Brian. As Larry takes care of some business, as he always does, he's always working. But this has been interesting for you going down to Richmond as well and having a different perspective of the team. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, you talk about the team bonding element of training camp, and really, you feel it when you're down there. There's no way to predict something like that, but they say that the good teams, when they're stuck together, they get better, and the teams that if they have any fractures, they're going to show in training camp. And I think that you really saw that this unit as a whole really gel together, coming off of a really successful season. There is no hangover. They're ready to go. These guys are primed.
People that you're looking for as you write, as you do things for Redskins.com, people that you're looking for to step up. When Larry talked about the wide receivers, but I want to talk to you, I want to shift towards the defense a little bit. There are some people, I'll come out and say Josh Wilson and some other people who could be some surprise people on the bubble here as we go into preseason game number 3 and 4.
Well, I think that what you're looking for now is, how do you balance experience versus ability? And you've got some real, you've got guys in E.J. Biggers and David Amerson who are extremely talented. And, Richard Crawford as well out of the slot. And, at what point does the talent overtake some of the veteran savvy that a guy like Josh Wilson or D'Angelo Hall might have? I think you're absolutely right. Health at this point for Josh Wilson and D'Angelo Hall is really paramount. They've got to go out there and perform. They've got to play, or else they're not going to have a job at the end of this preseason.
Ryan, I'm going to bring you right back, but I got to bring Chris Russell in because, Chris, Big Sexy, he's the man around town. He has to be certain places. You can stay with me for a little bit. So as I bring Chris in here, Chris, I do, because you are big and you are sexy. So yeah. Listen, I always ask you about injuries, about the health of the team, because no one knows that better than you. So let me have it. As we are live, right before game time, give me your medical. Your best James Andrews, please.
Well, I mean, if you want the medical update on Robert, clearly
besides Robert.
Yeah, besides Robert, I will leave him alone because
obvious.
He has had no setbacks and he should be fine. As far as the rest of the team goes, Brian Arakpo, Brandon Merriweather, Josh Wilson, Roderick McElroy, those guys were all working out along with others in a group under the direction of head strength and conditioning coach Ray Wright. Now, almost always that's a sign that they're not going to play when they're getting that kind of a workout well before a game under the supervision of the strength and conditioning staff. Now, I would say this, that there are times where guys wear uniform pants, i.e. Pierre Garçon last week in Nashville, and then they don't play. Trent Williams, about a half an hour ago, was in uniform pants without the cast on or without the club, as they call it, and looks like, and I believe appears, as we sit about an hour and a half before game time.
Your thoughts on this team? Obviously, I talked to Larry and I talked to Brian real quickly about the bonding experience that may or may not have happened down in Richmond, Virginia. As this team comes into the second preseason game, you've been doing this a long time, and so was I. Your thoughts on this team overall as a gelling unit?
Well, I think it's a very harmonious bunch. I mean, I don't think you see a lot of the poisonous personalities in this locker room that you see in other organizations, and I think that's a direct credit to Mike Shanahan and Bruce Allen. Everybody gets on them for the amount of players that have been pinched by the NFL rules 8 over the last 2.5 years because of either performance-enhancing or recreational drug violations. And true, you're not going to be able to eliminate every mistake and every potential problem. But what they have done, Lou, is they've eliminated bad people. You're not going to find people that are perfect. That's not going to happen. But they've eliminated bad seeds. And that's what you see is what you get in that regard, a tighter, more harmonious bunch. Talked to Logan Paulson on Friday afternoon in Richmond. He said he was skeptical about how Richmond was going to help them bond. He said, here's a perfect example of how it did. Last night I went out with the offensive line, tight end, offensive line. He goes, I would have never done that in Ashburn. So, it does help.
You and I last year talked about how this team, to coin a phrase and not to be corny from the Under Armour commercials, protecting the house. And those last couple of games that they played here late in the season, not the Seattle game, but that Giants game and then the Dallas game to win the division.
Even the Baltimore game.
Even the Baltimore game. This felt like a FedEx Field advantage. Now, when the Steelers come into town with all the towels and everything like that, I just feel, even though it's not feel comfortable as an opponent coming into play. Do you feel that?
Yeah, absolutely. They were 5-3, I think, last year here at home. And before that, it had been an awful stretch, quite honestly, an awful stretch encompassing not only Mike Shanahan and Jim Zorn, but all of Joe Gibbs Part 2, and that was something that had to change. And I don't know the reason for it. It was an unexplainable thing. But the bottom line is if you do not win at home, and really ideally you should be no worse if you're a good team than 6-2, no worse if you're a good team, because you can't ask for a lot more than 4-4 on the road. And if you go 6-2 at home and you go 4-4 on the road, Lou, what does it get you? 10. And it usually gets you in the playoffs, usually gets you right in the thick of things for the division crown.
We're looking at Kirk Cousins right now.
It's his birthday today.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yes, that's exactly right. Now, listen, my question to you is, this kid, every time he comes out on the field, I remember us talking the day they drafted him, like, what? Another quarterback. And we questioned, and we potted.
I get a lot of things wrong. This one, I'm proud to say I was right on, because I remember being at Redskins Park that day, and I got a tip that they were going to take Kirk Cousins about 2 minutes before it was announced. And I thought, wow, okay, that's a little bit of a loop, but I thought they were going to go quarterback in the 5th or 6th round in that draft. I think they were going to take Russell Wilson if he was still available, but much to their surprise, Russell Wilson was gone and Kirk Cousins was still available. Wilson going middle 3rd, Cousins there early 4th. They took him. It made all the sense in the world. Even before Robert got hurt last year, you needed a long-term 4 or 5 year quality backup and somebody to keep 1 to 1A or 1A to 1, and that's exactly what Kirk Cousins provides.
Okay, final question before I have to let you go, because I know you're doing stuff for the broadcasting network. One player that you think will be a surprise cut before this is over. One player that you are looking at and saying, you know what, I don't feel too good about this individual.
That's a not so obvious name.
Obvious name.
An obvious name. Well, a not-so-obvious name would be Josh Wilson. I think if there's a guy that's a big name that could get whacked because of the emergence of the Emerson, also Chase Minifield, E.J. Biggers. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying it will happen, but that's a guy. As far as,
some of these wide receivers?
I still, certainly the wide receivers. I mean, a Desmond Briscoe is, I think, in a lot of trouble. Now, what's helping him is that Dante Stallworth has not been healthy, quite honestly. So that, Dante, but they may not even take 6 wide receivers, and if they go 5 wide receivers only and take maybe an extra offensive lineman, then Dante and Dez are going to be on name value that fans are probably going to recognize that is going to get whacked.
Okay, what about Mr. Baker right here? We're looking at Chris right here. What are you looking at from him from this year?
Well, he's converted from nose tackle to starting end or to defensive end, left defensive end, and he can still play the nose and play the end spot, but he's been working almost exclusively at end all this offseason. Week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles and on forward, because you've got to keep those bodies fresh. Kedrick's the veteran, Chris the younger guy. Chris has got more natural talent, but Kedrick has all the savviness in the world, and I think it's a pretty good 1-2, all things considering that you lost Jarvis Jenkins, Adam Carricker, and Doug Worthington, who all played on that left side. you can do a lot worse than Chris Baker.
It's Chris Russell, the one and only Chris Russell from ESPN 980 going to do his thing. Now we bring back Brian Tinsman. And Brian, Chris was just talking about two players that he wanted that were one that was a name and one that was not so big of a name that could be in trouble. The one that he said could be in trouble is where I want to start with you. That was a big that he's saying that Josh might, you know, if not for a good couple more games, that he could be in trouble.
Well, I think that what we've finally seen in the secondary is they finally added some size. So, you know, that's what Biggers, that's what Minifield, that's what Amerson all bring to the table. And you know, Josh Wilson is an undersized guy out there. He's certainly scrappy. He is certainly, you know, he's led the secondary.
Fred Davis right here, I want to stop you there. You've seen the emergence of him, healthy Fred Davis. I mean, he's going to do wonders for this offense.
Absolutely. He's a guy that really brings another element that even with the emergence of Paulson last year, you don't really have. He can really stretch the field down the middle. He creates mismatches. You can't put a safety on him. They're not big enough, and, you know, he's way too fast for a linebacker. So having him back in the lineup just makes this
underrated. And it's interesting now because Sav Rocca and the special teams, Danny Smith was the special teams coach here last year. He's now over in Pittsburgh. They're seeing Danny Smith over on the other sideline. I think Danny Smith did a great job while he was here. Obviously, Western Pennsylvania is his home. He went there. There was a job opening there. I think Danny Smith did a great job here. Sav Rocca and Kai Forbath, I mean, the job that they did last year and what's expected of them, you know, can't be understated.
Well, in a punter like Sav Rocca, you've got a guy who's, you know, fine wine out there. He's getting better with age. Last year he actually had the highest net average of his career. So, you know, he's getting the most out of his kicks, and that was when he had a torn MCL out there. So, you know, playing injured, playing hurt. Kai Forbath is a guy who we finally saw some of the leg strength improve, you know, this year in training camp. He's a guy who, towards the end of camp, nailed a 58-yarder with room to spare. So, you know, they had him out there kicking 64-yarders, which in a game would be an NFL record. He just missed on those. So maybe he's not dialed in completely from the, you know, for the mile yet. But he's got everything, you know, in the mid-range and short range.
To the crowd again. I mentioned to Chris that the advantage and the way this field and this stadium was rocking for that Giants game and that Cowboys game and even the Seattle game, even though they lost, it made people happy and fun to come back here. And I think that even in preseason, you know, all the talks about other teams coming invading your stadium here in Washington, D.C.
Well, I think people talk about the aura of, you know, of RFK and how it used to hop. That's because there were awesome teams out there, you know. So we're finally starting to see that, building the aura here in Washington. You've got 85,000 fans when this place is full. And it was pumping. You're right. This is, you know, going last year, this is the fourth consecutive, you know, primetime game. And not to say that it's going to be packed or pumping like it was last year, but Steelers game, this is becoming a serious home field advantage. You're right.
Ryan Tinsman from Redskins.com. Thanks so much, buddy. Women's Club Takeover, the Redskins Women Club, your backstage pass to exclusive content, year-round events, and more is taking over the party decks for the Redskins-Bills game on August 24th. That's this coming up Saturday, and they want you to be a part of it. So join the club for free and refer a friend to join, and you will be entered to win the Wow Takeover Sweepstakes presented by Down. From Larry Michael, the voice of the Washington Redskins, from Chris Russell from ESPN 980, and Brian Tinsman from Redskins.com. The scene is set. The Washington Redskins take on the Pittsburgh Steelers in preseason game number 2. That has been it from here at FedEx Field for Gametime Live presented by Verizon. Enjoy the game between the Washington